Hi, this is Swapnil Bharti, and we are here at the Open Source Summit in San Diego. And today we have with us Deb Goodkin. You are Executive Director of the FreeBSD Foundation. So first of all, welcome to the show. I have a question for you. How did they let you in?
So they didn't realize that FreeBSD was not a Linux distribution. No, but seriously, they've been very welcoming to the FreeBSD community and wanting to include our voice in conversations about open source. So I really appreciated that they accepted my talk here.
Let's talk about the FreeBSD Foundation first. Can you give us an overview of the structure of the foundation? And what is your role within the BSD community? And how different is it from the project?
We were actually founded in 2000 by Justin Gibbs in Boulder, Colorado. And we're a 501c3, so we're a public charity for the public good type of charity versus if you compare us to other foundations, like the Linux Foundation, for example, they're what's considered a 501c6. And that's a trade association. And so their focus is more on helping companies with open source versus our whole focus is to support the FreeBSD operating system and the community that supports it. And we are based in Boulder, Colorado. And our purpose is to support the project in like their critical needs and holes that they need to be filled. For example, there might be bugs in the software and maybe some security issues. And so we have software developers on staff who can step in quickly to fix issues. So instead of waiting for a volunteer to step in, maybe they don't have time or they're not available, we have people on staff who can step in quickly. And so that's our main purpose. We also do a lot of advocacy for the project. And how we're different, the project and the FreeBSD Foundation, we're two totally different organizations. So we're not an umbrella organization for the project. We're actually separate. And what we do is we just help provide guidance and leadership. We provide legal support, the advocacy like I just talked about, and we do a lot of software development for the project.
You do a lot of software development for the project?
Yes.
What does that mean?
We have software developers on staff. We don't have a lot. We're very small. So as an organization, we have 8 board members, and most of those board members are hands-on, that they're involved in the project in many different ways. And then we have about 8 staff members who are employees, and they're located all around the world. And 2 or 3 of them are software developers, and so one focuses a lot on improving the tool chain, and we have one who will step in and work on any of the security issues that come up, and as well as doing a lot of reviewing for code submissions.
Oh, that's incredible. So what was the need to have, because it's FreeBSD, it's a community-driven project, was there a point in time where you realized that we do need to be proactive and create something like that?
Our growth was pretty organic. So when I joined back in 2005, I was the first employee. And so I was hired to run the day-to-day operations of the foundation. And so Justin, who founded the foundation, he had a day job, so he couldn't really run the things and support the efforts that he wanted to support. So I stepped in, and the idea was that we were going to fund outside projects and also do the other things that we were meant to do, which was our purpose to start with was really to hold the trademarks and be the legal entity for the project, and also have a organization that it will always be around, so people come and go, but the foundation would always be there. And so we just slowly grew as far as bringing on employees and taking on more support for the project. So we look at the project as a whole, and we talk to people within the project. We also talk to commercial users, and we look at what are the needs and what can we do to help fulfill those needs, as well as make FreeBSD better.
Right,
And that's what we do, and step in and help.
Can we talk about how the community works a bit? Because from what I learned from my good friend Andrew Waffa, who works for ARM, is that the structure of the community itself, how the code merge or patches work, is also different from the Linux kernel. So can you talk about the operations of the community itself?
Okay, yeah, what you just referred to in the Linux community is they have a lieutenant hierarchy. And so when you submit a change, then it actually has to go through that whole approval hierarchy. And it could take a long time to do that. So one thing that FreeBSD differs in how we're organized and how you submit code is that, so say you're new to the community and you're a programmer, and you want to get involved. And so you will submit a patch. And it'll be a piece of code, maybe to fix a problem or to implement something new. And then someone in the project, a committer, will review that. And then if they see that this is something that's acceptable based on the standards of the project, then they may commit it for you. And then as you keep contributing, then someone will recognize that and they'll reach out to you and they will offer to be a mentor for you. And so the whole process is and this is really what they want, is they want you to become a committer. And what a committer means is that you can actually commit the source code to the source tree. And that could be source code, it could be documentation. Actually, I'm going through the documentation process right now, where I actually submit patches and someone reviews them. This is for the freebsd.org website. And then if it's acceptable, that person or one the people who's reviewed my change will actually submit it to the source tree. And eventually, someone may reach out to me and see my commitment to the project, and then offer to be my mentor, and then eventually I would get my commit bit, and it means that I can make the changes myself. I don't have to go through the whole hierarchy. Mm-hmm. Now, it doesn't mean that it wouldn't be that we could submit substandard code. So all the code is reviewed.
When I talked to Linus, he said most of the time, I just say no a lot, because that code breaks something, or that is not suitable for the structure of Linux in the kernel. So here that is not the case.
Well, it would be both. So the person or the people, because it could be multiple people, who review the code, they are considered more experts in that particular area. So they're going to look at that, how that affects first the quality of that submission for that particular area. So people step in who are knowledgeable in that area, and they are the ones who review it. That code will also go through all the testing and the continuous automation that we have in place. So at least the code will build. So if that person isn't a committer, the code won't be committed until they know that that's acceptable.
Okay, I got it. So there are not one lieutenant, but a lot of lieutenants who are just like, everybody's looking at it, right?
Right. You have over 400 committers who could actually commit code. And so they all have their specialties within the operating system. But you have some who really understand the whole operating system, or that's their expertise. Right. And so various people will step in.
So the foundation has a very good structure, There's an executive director, and you're not the benevolent dictator, right? It's a democracy kind of thing, right? So what is the structure of the project?
Like I said earlier, it is separate from the FreeBSD Foundation. And so if you imagine an org chart, you'd have the core team on top. And so the whole FreeBSD project is democratically run. And so the 9 core team members are elected every 2 years by the committers on the project. And their purpose is really to provide leadership and to help with administration of the project and developer relations. They also help with the charters of the different teams. And so those teams are, we refer to them as functional teams. And so you might have the security team, you have the security team, you have the cluster admin team, you have release engineering, ports management, there's a list of, I don't know, maybe 20 different functional teams. And each team is responsible for a different aspect of the project. And so the nice thing about having these functional teams is it also allows people to get involved in different areas that they might be interested in. So they might be interested in doing more like infrastructure type of work, and so they might get involved with cluster admin. Or they may be really heavily interested in security, and so they might volunteer to be on the security team. And so the core team is sort of that umbrella in a way. They're viewed as leaders of the community, but they also they can't tell people what to do, but they can help at least make sure the teams are held accountable, people who are in the leadership positions in the teams, that they know what they're supposed to be doing, what their responsibilities are.
How do you ensure that, I mean, you touched upon that a bit, because people keep moving on, and so how do you ensure that there is fresh blood keeps coming in, and that you also help them grow and evolve to become the maintainer?
We get new contributors and users in a couple different ways. So we do advocate we advocate for FreeBSD around the world, and we also go to universities and we hold these workshops. And we've also been involved in the Google Summer of Code for maybe since the beginning that they've offered this program, and we've gotten a lot of FreeBSD committers through that program. So that's been very successful for us. So we do get a lot of young people who are interested in FreeBSD. And so we can bring them up by, there are many ways. First, we're known for excellent documentation. So even if you don't have a mentor and you're just getting introduced to FreeBSD, you can go on the freebsd.org website, and there's a FreeBSD handbook, and there's the developers handbook, and there's forums and email lists, and on Facebook, and you can get your questions answered. And the community really is really welcoming to new people. And I feel like especially when I see responses on Facebook, I always feel like people are just being really helpful and nice, which is a nice environment and community. The mentorship program is part of, it's not an official program, but it's how you become a committer. And so people step in, and usually they do have a lot of experience on the project and with open source. And they help guide and support these new people. And one thing about FreeBSD is, we have a very long history. So we actually descended from the original Berkeley Unix. And some of those original people who worked on Berkeley Unix are still involved in the FreeBSD project. And they're very approachable. And so these young people will go to conferences, and here you have Kirk McCusick, who developed the UFS and still works on file systems, and he's there, and he's telling stories about back in the day and when he was at Berkeley and working with Bill Joy, and he is really interested in helping these new people contribute, because people like Kirk, he's going to be with the project for a long time, but he won't be with the project forever. And we need to be able to replace these people. And so he knows that that's very important.
So you are here to poach some Linux kernel people for your BSD kernel.
I gave away all my stickers in my talk, and so I think that we have a good chance.
Why should somebody use FreeBSD? What is the benefit?
Well, so I sort of see two different uses. So one is a user like me, just using it on my computer. And then I see commercial users who are using it in their products, in their infrastructure, in universities. There's a lot of universities using it in their research. So there's a lot of different reasons for commercial users or organizations to use it. So some reasons to use FreeBSD as a user is, first, it's very easy to get information because of the excellent documentation. Knowing the community is approachable and friendly will make me more comfortable as a user to ask questions. So I'm not going to be afraid to ask a question if I think it's stupid. So that would actually make me tend to want to try FreeBSD over some other operating systems. Using FreeBSD over like a Windows or a Mac, a proprietary operating system, it allows me to learn more about computers. And I think it's really important to understand the foundations of computers and how they work. I think we're so removed from that when something goes wrong, then most people don't understand and they don't know how to fix things. And then as a user too, ZFS is very, very popular. And that's the latest, well, I wouldn't say the latest file system. We've had it in FreeBSD for, I think it was 2005 that was integrated into FreeBSD.
I think FreeNAS is also based on FreeBSD, right?
FreeNAS is based on FreeBSD.
Because that is the kind of de facto, media server. I mean, that's what I run at my home to store all these,
Oh, great! That's great to hear. Yes, it is.
So let's make it a bit harder for you.
Okay.
Why should a Linux user switch to FreeBSD?
Well, I mean,
just be careful because you may want to be invited next year. Okay.
Yeah. Well. So a Linux developer or user, I think it's really important for them to understand other operating systems. So if they're doing this in their job, so if they're a Linux sysadmin or a developer, then they may get, within their career, they may have to work on other operating systems. So it's really important to understand other operating systems so they can step in. It's also really important to understand different coding methodologies, and so understanding how the philosophy of FreeBSD code development versus Linux is also important, because then it helps them understand or they can decide for themselves which one they believe is better, and they can learn from the long history of FreeBSD too, and why things were developed and architected the way they were. Because when you look at the difference between Linux and FreeBSD, I mean, FreeBSD being based on the Berkeley Unix, you had 2 decades of development going on. And so FreeBSD is a great operating system to learn on. And if you really want to understand operating systems better, like if you want to be a systems programmer, or just to understand operating systems better, looking at the source code for FreeBSD is a great way to learn it, because if you compare the 2 kernels, FreeBSD is like 5.5 million lines of code. Linux is 35 million. So I'm not saying Linux is better because it has so much more code, or FreeBSD doesn't have a lot of bloat in it. It's really, there's a lot less code. And so if you want to learn, it's a great way to learn. And so I had a quote in my talk this morning about someone said they believe that they were a great Linux sysadmin because of knowing FreeBSD. So whether they want to switch, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to switch, but just understanding and learning about FreeBSD would help them in their job.
I don't know if you can name them, but can you like just give us an idea who is using FreeBSD?
Well, actually, my talk earlier, I had a slide that had some of the marquee companies that use FreeBSD. And so if I think about what companies were on that slide, NetApp is definitely a big user, Juniper Networks, WhatsApp, and Apple is on there because their operating systems are based on FreeBSD. And Trivago and Groupon, Netflix is definitely a big user of FreeBSD.
Do these companies also contribute back? I just want to understand the whole community part of it now.
It's a good question. A lot of companies do give back. They may give back in the form of code and support that way. And a lot of companies give back financially. So we're 100% funded by donations. And so we really depend on those donations to keep us going. And what our hope is that we'll receive more funding so we can increase our support.
So you have super PACs to lobbying for FreeBSD in the Congress?
Well, maybe not that way, but we're approaching commercial users, and especially ones that successfully use FreeBSD.
So FreeBSD is one of the, I mean, I would not say one of the, because that will upset Richard Installment, but it's like, it doesn't have the same restrictions that other, projects have. You can just take the code as long as you attribute it. There's no restriction. You can put in the proprietary code or whatever it is, if I'm not wrong. Right. So how do you, not how do you, but like, let's say there's a commercial vendor who is using FreeBSD. Why is it important for them to contribute back?
Well, so there's two forms of contributing back. So the financial one, which I'll hit first, is important because it keeps us going. And we do, like I was saying earlier, that we have software developers on staff who can step in quickly to make changes, fix bugs, and that really helps keep FreeBSD stable, reliable, and secure, and those are things that they depend on. We also do a lot of advocacy around the world. So we're starting to teach workshops and give presentations like I gave here. And so in doing that, we're raising awareness about FreeBSD, and we're also trying to recruit more users and contributors to the project. And so that will allow companies to have a larger pool to recruit from, whether they want to bring in developers. So the financial aspect of that is definitely beneficial to them. But the second aspect is when they upstream their changes, then their changes are in the tree, and so those changes get tested constantly, so that they're not constantly having to test their own code. So they can keep up to date with what our current code is doing. And so they don't have to go from, if they keep upstreaming their changes, then they don't have to worry so much about upgrading from like FreeBSD 9 to 12, which would be a major upgrade.
Right. I mean, the way I look at it is that if you're using open source, any open source, and if you're not contributing back, that means you are literally creating a soft fork internally, because
Yes.
you're making changes internally, not to the upstream. And now what will happen is in the next 1 year, next 6 months, you have a stack of software which is on your infrastructure but not on the upstream. So first of all, you cannot take the next upstream because your changes. So you'll have to do a lot of work to just. So you will have to maintain your own team of engineers to just maintain your fork. Then the value that you get by using free software is basically, to cut down on R&D and investment. So what is the point of using open source at all? So the best thing is do everything upstream, contribute every code that you are just try to put in the upstream first, then take it from the upstream. So that's how I look at it, that
Right.
if all the FreeBSD users, they should, just be working upstream because it benefits them.
Right.
It doesn't, they don't have to have their own technical debt at all.
One thing that we're also funding is we have a QA person on staff. And so he focuses almost 100% of his time on QA and continuous integration and automating the testing and increasing the test coverage. So when we talk about like companies helping fund our operations, I mean, that money is going to that, and they benefit greatly from that. So, Sony's a great example of on their PlayStation 4, it's FreeBSD based. And it's not because they came and told us, it was because they were involved in the mailing list, and they started contributing back to and getting involved with questions. And so it's helpful for us to know that. And also one thing that we do is we will reach out to these companies and ask them, do you have any pain points? Are there any features you'd like to see? So we really like to get that feedback too. So we want to know who's using it, and also it helps us promote FreeBSD. When we can say that companies like Netflix and Groupon and Trivago and WhatsApp, all these successful companies are using FreeBSD, then that's a big statement for us. And one other thing too is when we go to these conferences, a lot of times when we have a table, people will come up to our table and they'll say, "Oh yeah, our company uses FreeBSD." And so we've learned about a lot of like big companies that are using FreeBSD. And because it just works for them, they don't tell us that they use FreeBSD. There's no reason. That's not their product.
One of the beauties of open source is that you don't have to prove yourself. You can, as you said, somebody can, you see a bug and you found a solution, you send a patch, you become a committer. You don't have to have a degree, or you don't have to prove yourself to be part of it. And then you can be anybody who can contribute to the code, which actually make open source projects, kind of, a very friendly environment for diversity and inclusion. First of all, do you believe in diversity and inclusion? If you do, why?
Well, I definitely. Well, it depends on what you're referring to as diversity and inclusion.
How would you define diversity and inclusion?
So for me, as a female engineer, and not seeing a lot of women in the STEM occupations, it's very near and dear to my heart. And then in operating systems, you don't see a lot of women developers. And so it is an interest I've taken on personally. And what I've been working on, and this is part of being part of the FreeBSD Foundation, but also doing this on the side, where we've put together some intro to FreeBSD workshops, and we've gone to different universities, and we've been attending some women in tech conferences and offering these workshops to women. And the workshops aren't any different than the workshops we would offer to both men and women. But we have specifically gone to these types of conferences, or in Colorado, where we're located, that we've gone to meetups and local universities with the women and computing groups and offered the workshops there. And so what I'm trying to do is really trying to spark that interest, if there isn't that interest, in STEM, and especially with girls, and showing them that there are a lot of opportunities, whether it's technology or computing or engineering, and hopefully spark their interest. Use FreeBSD as the platform, and hopefully then they'll continue.
I mean, we talk about diversity, but diversity is not just for the sake of diversity. Diversity has a lot of practical benefit, economical benefit. So why diversity matters?
Well, diversity matters because you're getting perspectives from all these different people. Not only perspectives, but experiences. So diversity includes, it's not just gender, it's age. And so you look at, so I bring diversity to the project in a few different ways. First, of my decades of experience in engineering and computing. I'm a woman. I was a woman in engineering a long time ago. And so I have that, so those are like three different perspectives. But then we have someone who, maybe it's another woman who just graduated college. So now you have the age difference. That's bringing in that perspective. We all have different experiences. And so besides gender, we have cultural, and so from where we're from, economic, how we grew up, and do we have that financial ability to go to college? Like you were saying, that anyone, when you contribute to open source, anyone can contribute. And so it's really important to have the diversity of experience and age and gender and just everything that brings in these differences. So for an operating system, because that's what we're producing, that if I have this operating system product that I want someone to use, that we have all these different perspectives of people who are hopefully going to use the operating system. And that's one, and started to turn it around too. That's one reason why we're here at this. It's basically a Linux conference, and to bring, we're a minority voice in the open source world and in the Linux world, but we've been around for a very long time, and we're growing still. And so it's really it's important to include our voice too in the conversation to keep open source a healthy ecosystem.
Right. I remember Brian Benendorf, I asked him once. He said, if your community doesn't look like the world we live in, it will not sustain for a very long time. So and that's true, So the more diverse. This is the fun question before we wrap up. What operating system do you use?
That's a great question.
Ubuntu, Fedora, or OpenSUSE?
So my primary operating system right now is Windows 10. I do have FreeBSD also on my computer, and I'm working on transitioning to using FreeBSD 100% of the time.
When you're not managing and running the FreeBSD Foundation, what do you do in your free time? If you get, I do know about one of your activities to hijack Linux events and poach some kernel developers, but what are your hobbies? What do you do in your free time?
Well, for me, I want to be outside. And so, because when I'm working, I'm inside in front of the computer. And so living in Boulder, Colorado, there's so many opportunities
it's so beautiful
to be outside.
There, yeah.
So basically, my primary activity is running and hiking and cycling and really just walking my dogs. I have 3 dogs. And then if I have any other free time that's left over from that, then I'm spending actually continuously learning about FreeBSD. I spend a lot of time doing that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Deb, for talking to me today. And as I mentioned before we started recording this interview, that I was, ever since Andrew Waffa told me about the way FreeBSD community works and founded, I was looking forward. And so this was a good opportunity, where you happen to be here. So we can thank the Linux kernel community for getting me to know a FreeBSD person. But I would love to keep in touch to just, to see all the work that you're doing and how we can help, in just, spreading the word, because all about open source.
Yeah, I would love to keep in touch. I mean, there's so much work we're doing, and I would love to promote more of it. So thank you for the opportunity.